the issue of people from safe countries, Albania in this context, but people from safe countries claiming asylum. That's not what asylum was there for. Asylum was there to protect people who have serious threats to their life from their government.
Tell me what you make of the report in today's Times. You weren't particularly kind about it when you tweeted earlier.
No, the half is sensible and half is daft. In a nutshell, the sensible half. I mean, you may know, I don't know. The beginning of this week, or actually last weekend, I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister with 50 of my colleagues signing it, essentially saying, look, you've got to fix some loopholes. One is the issue of people from safe countries, Albania in this context, but people from safe countries claiming asylum. That's not what asylum was there for. Asylum was there to protect people who have serious threats to their life from their government. Afghans who work for the British government when we were there, Syrians, people in Eritrea, those sorts of people, not people coming from safe countries. And that was, to be frank, it wasn't just my idea. I'd copied it. I'd stolen it from Sweden. Why Sweden? Because Sweden's in the European Court of Justice and the European Court of Human Rights, and they'd written their policy, so it would work in that context. And guess what? Sweden accepts 0 asylum seekers from Albania and has for some time. So that bit was sensible. And I'm happy to support that, as it were. But other bits were just bonkers. I mean, I happen to very much dislike the Rwanda policy. I mean, it doesn't give us a great reputation in the world to go in for a policy which some will see as barbaric, but also it won't work. It's already cost 140 million. Nobody's gone there. We're waiting on the courts, and at maximum they'll take a couple of hundred people. So probably at about a total cost of about £1 million a person. So you've got good and bad in this report. And the daftest bit of all is pull out the European Convention on Human Rights and put ourselves alongside the likes of Belarus. The European Convention on Human Rights is doing nothing to stop this problem or to worsen this problem. If you look at all the countries in Europe, only about 4 of them have anything other than a 0 acceptance rate for Albanian refugees, and the simple truth is they're all members of the European Convention too. So it's got a complete spectrum right across the board of good and bad ideas, and the bad ones mostly are ones that are more populist than sensible. They're designed to get people angry about migrants, get people angry about the issue. No reason why they shouldn't be angry about it, but they shouldn't be angry to the point of stopping thinking.
Can I ask, what specifically do you object in the Modern Slavery Act? I just had a look before we came on air. Of course, it came into royal assent in March in 2015 under a Conservative government. And one of the points that it was trying to tackle, and I quote from the government's papers here, to enable law enforcement to stop boats where slaves are suspected of being held or trafficked. Isn't that what we're trying to achieve at the moment, to stop those boats?
Yep. And like so many of these things, it had the best of intentions. I'm pro being generous about legitimate asylum seekers. I'm pro being generous about solving issues of modern slavery. It was almost an obsession for Theresa May when she was Home Secretary, and that's a good thing. But the trouble is, it was written with a load of loopholes in it. So when these people come across the channel, they don't come on, as it were, under their own steam. They've normally all paid money to typically Albanian criminal gangs, Albanian gangsters. And those gangsters give them a bit of paper. And it says, when you land in Britain, you should claim asylum. And if they don't take that, then you should say you've been trafficked and that you're a modern slave. It basically sets out to use our own generous, well-intentioned law against us. And it can only do that because the law is badly written. So, for example, if somebody has been trafficked, they're telling you, let's say you're an immigration officer, somebody arrives off the beach, they've come from Albania, and they say to you, I didn't want to come here, I have been brought here against my will as a modern slave, and I've been trafficked, then surely the right answer is to say, fine, we will fly you back to your own home and talk to your government about providing you protection. That's the right answer, not to spend 540 days deciding whether their case stands up or not, in which time they could have established a family in the United Kingdom, and then you can't remove them at all.
Okay, it is perhaps one of the issues here that we are confusing asylum seekers with economic
Yeah.
migrants,
Mhm.
and the truth is, and that's perfectly clearly set out, I think, in Tim Shipman's piece in the Sunday Times,
Yeah.
that we are in dire straits when it comes to filling permanent roles in various sectors of our employment, and we actually need people. So why are we taking this sort of zero tolerance approach, and particularly why are we focusing on Albanians? What is it? I mean, I keep hearing, and you just repeated it, and you're making the association that Albanians and criminal gangs, but we know that that's not the case, because we've got plenty of Albanians coming into this country who are women and children. Are you suggesting that they are also part of Albanian criminal
No, no, no.
gangs?
Let's dissect that to make it accurate. I mean, the first thing is what I said was Albanian gangs were bringing them here. So you could have a perfectly decent person, but they're brought here by a criminal mechanism, and that's what's wrong. The reason, I mean, you're quite right to distinguish between economic migrants and asylum seekers and people seeking protection. But the reason the government has to deal with this is that a lot of would-be economic migrants claim the protected asylum, which they don't deserve, and or don't justify. And the reason that Albanians come to the fore is that they are the largest category of people from a safe country. I mean, I looked very carefully through this in the last few months, just because the problem was getting so large. And the simple truth, I compared our position in the European Convention on Human Rights and how many times we'd been referred to the European Court with Albania. And in the last 5 years, Albania has been referred to the European Court less times than we have. I mean, in theory, I'd have a better chance claiming asylum in Tirana than vice versa. It simply isn't a case for providing asylum for people from a safe country, and it isn't just Albania. I mean, the Swedes, if you look at it, have listed a whole series of safe countries, I think 6 or 7, ranging from Albania to
Okay,
Mongolia.
okay,
So that's the reason there. It's not, if somebody, just because somebody claims asylum doesn't mean they're
okay.
an
But
asylum
as
seeker.
you mentioned, there is the issue between asylum seekers and economic migrants, and a very
Yeah.
simplistic view of this might be we are in desperate need of low-skilled workers. People from Albania and plenty of other countries are wishing to come here and work. Why are we not making that process easier and using those people who want to come here, whether they entered legally or illegally, but it's by the by for the moment, but using those people because we need them. We have the
All right.
vacancies.
Three elements to that. Number one is you must never confuse the two, because if you do that, every single would-be economic migrant who can get here would use the asylum and related humanitarian measures to get in. End of story. No control of migration whatsoever, and no party that I'm aware of, anyway, has ever said we're going to have uncontrolled immigration. Number two, the
No,
question
but
of
what we have, and sorry to interrupt you there,
yeah,
but what
all
we
right.
have had is since 2010, when the Conservatives came to power and promised, remember those days of numbers in the tens of thousands, we've seen the exact opposite. We've seen immigration rise year after year. So obviously what's going on is not really working.
Including last year, when if I remember correctly, there were 300 and I might have got the last number, either 330,000 or 350,000 work permits given to people coming abroad to work here. That's 350,000 explicit approvals by the government. Understand as well that every country in Europe has got labour shortages, every single country, including Germany, which has taken, I think, over 1 million migrants in recent times. So the migration is not a simple solution to that. What Germany does, and this is something that people might want to debate, is have a special very low skill. I mean, other people call it menial work, but a very low skill category that they bring in. So that's a solution you can solve that way. And fair enough. I mean, if you have that, Albania actually has just such an arrangement with Germany, and it does rather cut down the pressure on the German asylum system, but also the Germans have a very tough role, just like Sweden does, on turning down asylum seekers from safe countries, from Albania again. So there are two different problems, and trying to elide them one into the other just leads you into all sorts of other difficulties, other loopholes. I mean, you would actually have completely uncontrolled migration. And what we do know in the UK is that something like 80% of our population, nearly all of it, frankly, 80% of our population do not want uncontrolled migration for a variety of reasons. Now, you hear the CBI going on about not having enough workers. Well, I'm afraid, I used to be a company director of a FTSE 100 company. I think part of that is they've been very lazy over the last 30, 40 years when we've had open migration and not trained people enough and not also altered their work patterns enough. However, the simple truth is that we have to control our migration one way or another by a controlled mechanism, not by some sort of open-ended principle. And it's a very dangerous thing to confuse an altruistic issue with an economic issue. And the altruistic issue, I mean, I'm strongly in favor of being actually rather faster than we are at the moment on allowing those Afghans who helped us in the Afghan war into the country, because they're going to be killed or tortured by the Taliban. I'm very keen in other areas where, let's say, Syrian opposition members need to escape from Syria, that we help them. But we mustn't let that turn into a way of getting cheap labour for British industry.
Okay. David Davis, thank you very much for giving us your time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
David Davis there, Conservative MP and, of course, former Cabinet Minister.